but I think just as a person, but as a leader, if you take yourself too serious, it's really hard to grow. And if you don't take your job serious, you're not going to dabble into different avenues to try to learn and try to improve and try to get better at what you do. And so I think there's a certain humility that comes with that.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the head men's basketball coach at Concordia University, Texas, Stan Bonewitz. He's led the Tornadoes to 232 wins in his 17 years as their head coach. He's also in his 7th year as the Associate Director of Athletics. Coach Bonewitz's squads have averaged 90 points per game in 6 of the last 8 seasons, including being ranked 4th in the nation in scoring offense with a 96.9 points per game mark in 2016-17. Concordia has also led the ASC in scoring 13 of the last 16 seasons. He graduated as the all-time assist leader for Texas Tech with 435 assists and held that record until 2010. While being coached by his father in high school, Coach Bonewitz led San Antonio's East Central High School to the 1995 Texas State Championship with a perfect 35-0 record. He was also named Mr. Texas Basketball that season and was later inducted into the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Well, Coach, my first question for you is, how does it feel to be the second greatest player that I've ever had on the podcast? How's that feel?
It's kind of outstanding, man. I'm surprised I made the top 5.
Darren Williams. I chose Darren Williams over you.
Fair.
That's okay, but you're in front of Jeff Clarkson, and I'll tell you why. That's right. I'll tell you why though, because when we were down at TABC and Jeff and I were talking about you,
right,
he just made the comment like, well, he was an outstanding player. I was like, no, I didn't really know that. I think, when you graduated college is right when I was getting in. So
I think we just missed each other.
Yeah. You graduated in 2000. Yep. I started in the fall of 2000. But so I didn't know that. But for him, he is one of the most confident players I've ever had because we played in adult leagues and stuff together for years. For him to give you that compliment, man, that meant a lot. So you're number 2.
Well, it's also, I think it makes it easier to give those compliments when you beat that person, and since he is technically 1-0 all time against me,
see,
I think it's a little bit easier.
He's got that hanging on top of him.
He's kind of got that on me. I remember you, Coach, whenever, I think if I'm correct, when I got finished playing when Bob Knight came to Tech, I was doing radio with him, and we came down and played. They came down and played Baylor, and Coach Bliss was there, and I believe you were on that team.
Yep. Yeah. Right? So my freshman year is when Coach Dickey was still at Tech.
Right.
And then my sophomore, junior, senior year, Coach Knight came. So we definitely would have crossed over there.
Y'all had maybe, was it Lucas and with Lawrence Roberts maybe?
Yeah, those were the talented years. Yeah, we had them.
Players, man.
Yeah, and then we lost them all going into my senior year. Had 6 players, and
I remember that too.
Yeah. But Coach Knight was, I always enjoyed getting to compete against him. And my senior year, I just made the choice that because he usually would shake hands with the head coach and then bolt right after, wouldn't go through the line. And so for years, I never got to shake his hand. And senior year at Tech, they beat us. We were up at half by 4 points with 6 players, but they beat us. And I just put my head up, I'm going to shake his hand. So when he was walking across half court, I just took off from the line and went right for him.
Yeah.
And he said some really kind things to me that I'll just never forget. But that was like my highlight of that year.
It's funny. It's funny if you grow up as a basketball person, which obviously you did, and I did as well. There were coaches you kind of looked up to, then you play against them. I had a similar experience with Jerry Tarkanian. I grew up a diehard UNLV fan, and I was a sophomore at Tech. We played Fresno State out in Las Vegas, and it was his first game back to Vegas. It was a kind of a surreal atmosphere, and we won the game. but like more importantly for me, that was kind of the same thing, man. The highlight of walking through that line at the end of it and getting to shake the shark, shark's hand. That was
First of all,
similar type of feeling.
You were, I mean, you were an incredible player, Mr. Texas basketball, which is, or Mr. Basketball in Texas, sorry, and then all-time assist leader until it was broken by Robertson later on. But like, so you and I had very different. I averaged 4.5 points a game for 4 years. Like I was a charge taker, great teammate, rah guy. So we had very different experiences. But like you're right, in the Big 12 and playing, there were times where I felt like I know I'm in the game, but I'm just going to take a second to acknowledge the fact that like that's Roy Williams right there.
Exactly.
That's Eddie Sutton right there.
Yep.
And then Bill Self came, and then I'm running down the floor, and then man, that's Bobby Knight yelling right there.
Right.
And then you got to ask the question, why am I here? So
if you take too long to kind of figure that out, you could be in trouble. Because I used to have
Rick Barnes. Well. I mean, the coaches were just incredible at that.
Absolutely.
At the time. And they still are, but Well, Coach, thank you so much for giving up your time and talking hoops. This has been a talk that I've been excited about because I love running and gunning. I want to figure out how you average 96 points a game, but more importantly, just to get to talk with you, learn more about your story. So, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, thanks for having me on.
You've been able to play. Obviously, your dad was a great coach, and then you've been able to play for so many in college, and then probably against. What are some characteristics that you see in great leaders?
I think for me, as I've gotten older and kind of progressed and been able to, branch out and learn from others and pick up on some things. I think there's multiple characteristics that stick out. One is, and it's going to sound cliche-ish, but it seems like great leaders are individuals who are kind of constant learners, who are trying to improve as coaches, as people, who will step outside themselves and be uncomfortable and dabble into areas that are different to them, and are willing to listen and apply different aspects of from different professions into what you do. I think I also think me and as coaches, as a group of coaches, I'm really close with, and we are on a text thread and we talk all the time. But one of the things we kind of talked about is the importance of taking your job serious, but not yourself. And I think that's really important, man. I think as a player, we stress that to our guys. But I think as a person, but as a leader, if you take yourself too serious, it's really hard to grow. And if you don't take your job serious, you're not going to dabble into different avenues to try to learn and try to improve and try to get better at what you do. And so I think there's a certain humility that comes with that, and you have to be willing to to accept and to know that what we're doing again is fun, but it's a job, but it's not it's really not that important. And you got to know that, you know what I mean? Like you got to take it, you got to take what you're doing serious. You got to come into work, you got to put the time in. You can't skip steps, all the stuff that as a player you got to apply to as a coach. But you can't be somebody who's stubborn and unwilling to adjust, adapt, or change, or try to grow from who you are. If I'm the same person now that I was, I'm 45. If I'm the same person I was at 35, that's pretty disappointing. And if I'm the same person 10 years from now, that's even more upsetting. So I think great leaders are readers. I think they're people who, again, will read, obviously sports leadership type stuff, but also will just read. We'll read fiction, nonfiction. I just think there's a lot that if you can challenge yourself and stimulate yourself, I think you can do nothing but grow. And if you grow, I think you got an opportunity to be better at whatever it is you're doing.
What do you like to read? Anything you're into right now, or that you just finished?
I kind of bounce around. I've read kind of fiction, nonfiction, I finished. There was a book that was written on the Lakers, the three-peat kind of Kobe Shaq years, which was fascinating, and kind of provided some insight that didn't realize some of the stuff that was happening during that time. And then I like to, like Ryan Holiday is one that, James Clear, guys like that who again, I at some point I think you can read. Like I like to read to grow as again as a leader, but then I just can't stay in that genre of nonfiction for too long. I have to I have to change it up and have variety. Kind of like with most things, I whether you're doing a workout, whatever it is, you have to kind of change it up or you're going to get stale. So I try to go back and forth between the two, between reading fiction stuff and nonfiction.
That's a really good point earlier about not taking yourself too seriously. But at the same time, if we're not taking our job seriously or our programs, our players are going to feel that. And excellence won't be obtained. And because that is the goal, not perfection, but excellence. I think younger coaches, and I'm really just speaking from experience, we come out thinking, I know a lot about this. I can really do this. And I've got it pretty much figured out, so that we don't have a growth mindset. We're pretty fixed. And then for most of us, we get our tail whipped for a few years. Hopefully we don't lose our job, but we have multiple losing seasons and we're just frustrated. And then we learn that lesson. You know what? I don't have this all figured out. What advice do you have for younger coaches so they can maybe sidestep that landmine of taking themselves too seriously right off the bat and forgetting their why a little bit?
Yeah, I think you have to remove outcome from the definition from defining you as a coach. And that sounds really simple, but it's difficult. I think, we can't help it as competitors. You can't help but at the end of a game have a certain feeling whether you win or lose. That one's going to take you to the high, the other's going to take you to a really low place. But I think managing that and understanding that it doesn't matter. Like it does, but at the end of the day, what matters is what does your team look like? Are they bought in? Are they engaged? Are they playing hard? Are they selfless? Are they about each other? Like you can walk into a gym and hopefully you can see what a program's about pretty quickly into whether it's how they're warming up, how they're acting on the bench, how they're competing during adverse times, like all that stuff. And to me, if you this past year we were 8-4 to start the season, and and to the average person, to people maybe within our department or people on campus, we were off to a great start. You guys are playing well, and we were not good. Like we were not a good team. We were not guarding the ball. We were not blocking out. We were not we had a lot of flaws that weren't being exposed. And then we went on a spell where we lost 10 games in a row, and all of them, not all of them, 6 of them were one possession games. They were free throw games. They were little things, but through that process, it was terrific because it gave us a chance to grow and fix and to see kind of what we needed to do with clear eyes to get better, so that by the end of the season, we gave ourselves a chance in the conference tournament. We were playing our best, and we had a chance to win a game against a really good opponent, and we showed growth. And I think that, process is used a ton, but if you can remove
Jason Garrett wore it out up here,
yes,
but he was right.
But it is true, and if you can, but the hard part is, that's a book that was really big to me was Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, because at the time it put some perspective. It made me really think about the idea that that it had to be negative about it, but nobody really cares. It's not that important to other people, and so you got to quit worrying about losses or so much about what you feel like people are thinking of you, and people aren't. It's and if you feel that and you start to put that onto your team, it heightens pressure. And so it's the idea of, man, we're gonna like all we're gonna care about is improvement. And if you, it's like, hey, you were a Division One Big 12 guard that played at the highest of levels, and like making shots is tough. Making threes, whether open, guard, or whatever, is tough. And if you base all of your like your who you are on just the makes, it's going to be hard. But it's like, are you doing the steps before to give yourself an opportunity to make it? And if you are, then all you can do is hope it goes in. And that's kind of what we tell our guys. It's like, man, all we can do is practice, compete, not skip steps, not, and focus literally on the practice, the game, and then hope, during the game, we do what we're supposed to do. Shots go in, and we win. And if we do, great. If we don't, let's see what was good or bad, and let's move on to the next one, and not get caught up of course we're going to be upset. Of course we're not going to walk out feeling good about it, and we would never allow that to be a standard. But it's also, I look at it, it's kind of a season's like an experiment. And I think you spend the season dabbling in with what formula works, what you put here, what you put there, and you just continue to fine tune it until you find what works. And hopefully it's sooner than later, but you want to find that so that when it gets to the end of the year, you're playing your best. But you can't do that if you're basing everything on, did we win the game? Because wins can be so deceiving, and they can make you think something about yourself that you're not, and complacency can creep in, and it just makes it it's dangerous. And so for us, I'm at a point where, for good or bad, it does not impact. It hurts, but I'm able to navigate it better at this point, because I'm able to really, really enjoy the steps of a season, and taking them for what they are.
Coach, that's very Ted Lasso of you
Now,
to have that mentality, but which I completely agree with you, and I love that shift away from resulting to taking every game for really what it is, not the end of the world, but a learning experience. Have you always been that way? Or
No.
Is that something like, what was kind of the big moment for you where you realized that the path you're on it can't work?
Well, I think honestly, reading that book, Ego's the Enemy, I think it just kind of brought some perspective to me, and I read it during one of our seasons, maybe 6-7 years ago, and it kind of opened me to thinking more just along those lines. And again, if you saw us after a loss, you would, I mean, again, we're miserable. We're not happy. We're not, nobody on the team said we're not, if we're having an 8-hour bus ride, there's no talking, like we're not celebrating it, but it's not bearing us. And we're not, it doesn't keep me up the same way, because again, I know that there's more to play. And I know that we're just really trying to, we're trying to figure it out, even when we're winning. And we kind of adopted a mantra of like, when we try to recruit to that, like we try to recruit guys who we feel like will fit in that, with that mindset, and guys that are, as we say, people we want to lose with, as bad as that sounds like, because when you win, everybody's great to be around. Everybody's enjoying it. The meal's good afterward. Like everything's good. But it's like, no, man, when we have to drive back 8 hours this past year after we lose in Arkansas, who do I want to be on the bus with? Who do I want to stop at that Buc-ee's at 2 a.m. and be around? Like, that is what matters. And I think if you have those people, then you can teach them and you can coach them. And then it's up to you as a coach that's where you got to grow and you got to learn and you got to adapt. And it's up to me to spend my downtime trying to get better. So I give those guys an opportunity, because I can't preach process and can't preach steps and then on my own be lazy, or on my own not try to get better, or on my own not try to adapt and grow and stay modern with what we're doing offensively, defensively. Like if I just get lazy and say process, well, that's a cop out. It's like, no, I gotta invest in my off season. So I'm getting better, and so I'm learning, so I'm progressing. So again, I don't want to be the same person I was 10 years ago. I want to be the same coach. I I don't want to fall behind the times of what's happening with the game of basketball. And so, it's not, we're not going to skip steps. So it makes all that kind of work a little bit easier.
Coach, if you don't mind, I'd like to give maybe my experience real quick on kind of learning that, because I'm 5 years younger, but I feel like I did finally get to a point. I'm still trying to get better and better with that type of mentality, but I typically don't like to tell too many of my stories. So if you'll indulge me.
No,
So there's two things that happened to me that helped me realize, one, the path that I was on was destructive. I probably wasn't going to be coaching for very long, and was going to damage relationships with my players. I came from McKinney High School with Wes Watson, where we together worked on this style of pressing and running and gunning, and really enjoyed it. And so I brought my first year at Faith, 5A, 5A taps, about a size of a 3A public school. So not the biggest school, but brought this style over. And that team was just the right athletes. They trusted me and skilled. And so 373s the first year. They had never done anything like that. Personally, I had never seen anything like that. And so we started to develop as a program this idea of, we are the best shooting program. That's what we hang our hat on. Nothing wrong with that. But the next year we made 423, but we were 14 and 21. Right. And I felt like this idea of 14 and 21, that doesn't really matter. Like, what's this number? What's this number that we're getting to? But then I started to feel like, I don't know if my players really care about that, but this is who we are. The next year we make 432, and we did have a little bit more success, but it was, here's my moment. It's the spring after that season, and I'm looking at the NFHS records for threes. I'm sitting in my study hall looking that up, and I realized, man, we can qualify for tons of these records, team per game, all this stuff. There's about 8 to 10 that we would. So I printed out all the forms, filled it out, sent it in, and I'm just sitting around there for a month, because this is all about me. Right. And this is about the system that I brought here and all the records. Coach, they emailed me back and they said, wow, thank you for sending this in, but because you're a private school, we don't acknowledge that your records. Right. It was like a punch in the gut, this realization of, this doesn't matter. Right. Like nobody cares. My players didn't even care. I was the only one doing this. So that was a good moment. And then really working for PGC for 5 years. I mean, the coach that I entered in there, very different than when I left, because you really just, and the whole idea too of just making the big time where you're at, but not taking yourself too seriously. All the reminders that you've already given us, those two things.
Well, we joke all the time, me and Andre Cook, the coach at St. Ed's, we always joke that, like, in our lives, there's like 3 people that care. That, how our game, our wives, just because it kind of puts us in a weird mood. My parents, and that's about it. And like, even like my assistant, he's all in, he's invested. But like Coach Cook, we'll talk, and if we win, lose, whatever, like, he'll be upset for us, I'll be upset, but it doesn't like, if he loses, it doesn't change my appetite. I'm having my dinner. I'm having, I'm going to be upset with him for about 15, 20 minutes, and then I move on back to my life. Because as majority of individuals, we don't have enough headspace to think about other people, because we're so consumed with ourselves. And that's just a flaw, but it is what it is. And
it's what's right in front of us. Yeah.
It's right in front of us. And so, but as coaches, you get so caught up in scoreboard, you get so caught up in that it just can just bury you, because you think all these people are judging you, and they're all making this guy's a good coach. And man, we always talk about, if you go, him and I joke about, if you go into a restaurant and you can, if a waiter comes over and they see you're a coach and they ask how you're doing, and one coach says, hey, I was 5 and 25, they're going to kind of go, that kind of give you a look like, oh, it's a tough year, coach. And the other coach, hey, how are you? 25 and 5. Oh, they're celebrating and excited for you. And like, they may have no idea that the 25 and 5 coach was playing a weaker schedule, was playing with guys that were just straight talent. Didn't coach. The 5 and 25 may have had injuries, may have had, eligibility. She could have all kinds of stuff happen, but the layers of it, they don't know. And so it's like, the people who know, and That's what matters. Again, and that, and then play, and your players. If your players see you committed to them and to their growth, and that, I think it's easier also to connect to players when they realize that outcomes don't dictate your relationship with them. It frustrates you and it gets you upset, but like if you can truly commit to their growth by being process driven and being, non-outcome driven, and we're about the outcome of you performing and you maxing out for that day and getting the most out of that practice out. And I think it allows for you to get through those tougher times a little bit easier with that group. So um, it's challenging, and I think as a young coach, it's something that you have to navigate and just kind of work through.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
Coach, what are some of the standards pillars of your program?
We have looking at before we spoke, just kind of get my mind kind of wrapped around. We put together something we call it's a culture pie, and it kind of encompasses. We have beginning of the season. We have a first team meeting. We let our players. We have a couple usually captains, leaders. I don't necessarily assign captains, but we have guys who I feel like we can trust with these ideas to communicate with the team. And they kind of there's 5 of them, and they're not going to be different for most, but one's mentality, and it's the idea of just we want to gas out, and we want to it's something that you'll hear a ton in our program, is the idea of operating with urgency. A big word in our program is urgency. Is I'm going to coach you with urgency. We're gonna move from station to station, or from lift to lift, from drill to drill with urgency, and we're gonna if we're running on the baseball field, if we're in the weight room, if we're whatever, we're gonna gas out. And so it's like every play we our goal. Like when I got finished playing, I could have maybe gone and played overseas. I had some options, but I felt like I had done everything I could to give myself the best opportunity to be the player I could become. And I didn't really have a whole lot left undone. And I feel like with our guys, if we can accomplish that for them, then when they get finished here, they can, whether it's into the season or into their career, they can turn the page. I think so many guys can't turn the page because they don't do that. They don't make the sacrifices when they're playing. They don't. I tell them, hey, like it was to get into play for me. Getting to play, it was very lonely. There was summers missed. There were holidays missed. There were breaks missed. There was a lot of stuff I had. There were social events. There were proms missed. There was spring breaks missed. Like all that stuff, I had to be willing to sacrifice because of my limitations if I was going to have any opportunity to reach my ceiling. And so, we have guys that have a much higher ceiling than I ever had, and I want them to experience that because it does create some of your greatest moments. But also, when I'm done, I don't look back and go, "Man, if I would have just committed a little more time here." It's like, no, I literally gassed out. I made sacrifices. I did what you have to do, and you know what? It was good enough to get me here. Could it get me to the pinnacle of where I wanted to go? No, but that's okay. At some point, physical limitations come in. At some point, my ceiling is reached, and I'm good. But as long as I built that house, I always tell our guys, some guys' ceiling can give them a 2 or 3 story house. Mine was probably a 1-story house, but I built it, and I lived in it, and I was good. And once it was time to move out, I could move out because I had invested everything I needed to invest. And that's kind of what we want for them for each season, so that you're done and you're like, all right, coach, I'm good. I'm moving on. We're good. And so, we talk a ton about that and about just what that looks like, what that means, and try to remind them, of that.
Coach, that's so good. I don't think I've ever heard another play or former player, because that's you coach, but former player talk about it like that. and I think you and our stories are very similar. Even though you were a better player, the idea of maxing out what we had, like I tell my players all the time, athletically, that level was too high for me.
Yeah.
It was too
Me too.
good. They
Yeah,
were
me
too
too.
they were too fast, too strong,
Yeah.
too long. So what I could do in high school really didn't translate, but
Yeah.
I had to find a new path. And
100%.
so
Yeah. Had to find a niche. And that's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Like, find your niche. Like, I averaged 30-some points a game in high school. Did it? I wasn't doing that in the Big 12, and
no,
that's fine. And I was, again, self-aware enough
yeah,
to know if I'm going to make it, I better find a niche. And so, especially as a freshman, I was on a team with pros, with Jason Sasser and Tony Petit, and yeah, I wasn't like, it was a joke in the weight room what I was doing compared to what they were doing, and on the field, I wasn't gonna. So I had to create something that made me valuable.
yeah,
And if I didn't recognize that, and I tried to be who I was in high school, I'd have been a fool. Like that wasn't going to happen. And so I tell our guys, it's no levels are levels. It's all relative. Like, create your niche, force us to play you because you bring a value that you see we need. Recognize, be aware, study, see what we're doing, what are we talking about constantly. Adapt that, you do that, because again, I was saying, nobody's ever scored a point from the bench. So your goal is to get on the floor.
yeah.
Figure that out. What niche can you bring that will give you that opportunity? And so, we talk again, and nauseam about that. We talk about and I'll go through these quick. But the second one is communication, which again, that's nothing. But to us, it's more about open and honest conversations. Like, if you're fraudulent with your conversations, if you're telling me what you think we need to hear, if you're just speaking words to be spoken, that doesn't work. That's not real. Like, we want to have real relationships. We want to have real conversations. We want to be able to talk to you in a way that's not robotic and scripted. And like, no, we try to throw that stuff out the window, and we try to open a channel for, again, it's not even like harsh conversation. It's just real conversation, just real people having run. Sometimes, you know what, there's nothing to talk about. It's fine. You don't have to. I think when you organic, or when you script events, or you script too many, it becomes fake. It becomes fraudulent. Like, I want organically for things to happen, and for conversations to flow, and for people to be able to, but also to have difficult conversations, whether it's with the coach, whether it's player and player. Like, be okay with that, and understand, like, that's part of a team becoming a real team, as opposed to these families and this stuff. Is like, that's fine, but like, most functional families are able to have tough, real conversations. It's the dysfunctional families are the ones that operate with that level of like ambiguity, where there's not clarity. And so we try to have real, whether we're coaching, we try to be honest and have, again, difficult conversations on what we see. We're not going to try to mask it if we see something, and we want, but we're also going to be honest with our praise and our like, we want to be, again, to our best of our ability, as real as we can be. So the third one's trust. Just building trust amongst each other, being a person of your. Say you're going to do something, do it. I'm going to do that. If I tell you I'm going to be up here to open the gym, I'm going to do it. If I tell you I'm going to meet you, I'll get you a tutor for stuff, we're going to do it. So do the same. And do it with your teammate. And do it do it that day, and then put it on repeat, and do it the next day, and do it the next day, and do it the next day. Response is a big one to it, and that's kind of a Viktor Frankl, the Man's Search for Meaning, where I don't know if you're familiar with that, but he talks a ton about he was a survivor of Auschwitz, and talks about came up with the idea of this. It's called logotherapy, but came up with the idea of stimulus versus response, and in between those two, kind of dictates your life. There's a stimulus that's going to happen to you every day. How you respond dictates what's going to happen next to you. So we talk to our guys all the time of like managing that space in between, whether it's a bad call, whether it's you're not playing, whether it's you didn't get an open pass, you thought you were open, you didn't get it, whether you hit a shot, whether you make a big play. Like, there's always that. So can you manage that and then respond appropriately? You know what I mean? Like, and that's something that we will point out, we will talk about, we will speak ad nauseum about, is that stimulus response, and making sure we crush it. We recognize it when we are successful with it. We applaud it when we aren't. We work on it. And as a coach, like, I got to be accountable to it, right? Like, I got to understand when we're losing these games back to back, how am I managing? How's my response? How am I managing that space in my head to make sure that I'm responding in a way that gives us a chance to be successful? And then the last one is self-awareness. And that's the idea. I think that's as important as any of them, because if you're not self-aware, basically, if you can't get over yourself and remove your ego, you cannot grow as a person. And if you can't grow as a person off the court, then there's no way we can coach you. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not self-aware to know this and this is what's happening, this is who I am. First of all, you're not gonna be that much fun to have around. If you can't get over yourself and you take yourself too serious. But more important, as important, you're not gonna change. Like, a person that lacks in self-awareness kind of stays who they are because they're not willing to accept good and bad about what they are as a person. And it's one of our jobs, to kind of help them grow and see that, and have conversations with them all the time about that, and recognizing insecurities, and recognizing things that may be limiting them from being. Maybe there's a fear of a failure, there's a fear of pain, there's a fear of getting tired, and like, don't create a mirage or a reason why you didn't make that line, or why you didn't get to the help. Like, no, you you didn't do it because this is what is going on with you, and this is what we got to fix. And that's okay. And I've seen guys who have been great about it, who understand. And we've seen guys who just struggle, and it's hard because it's hard to change those behaviors that would make them better here, but then also is going to help them when they leave. I think that's as important as any of it.
Coach, I love the flow of that culture. Culture is a buzzword that I think more and more people are struggling just to even use. And former coach at Birdville, Coach Fitch, who had done it for 30 years, he said, "Man, we never used that word before,
right.
But it's just so your standards, the pillars, the way that you show up." TJ Rosine over at Emmanuel College says that self-awareness is a superpower. And so I think he's right on the money, but the fact that ends your culture, but you're right, it will really shape the rest of those words that you used.
Because I don't think you can reach any of them. I don't think a lot of that stuff can happen if I'm not self-aware as a coach. And that's what I think I'm pretty I think I'm fortunate right now in that, like, I have one assistant, and he's terrific, and he works extremely. He fits that. He works hard, doesn't take himself too serious, is self-aware to know his good, his bad. So we can sit here, and our relationship is so healthy and so real because we both understand our flaws. And he can call me when I'm being ridiculous on something, and I can do the same. But we're both striving toward the same thing. But we're both aware that, like, there's areas of strength, areas of weakness, and we're in alignment with that. And I think when you have that, it trickles down with your players because they see it and they recognize kind of how we conduct ourselves, and it allows us to recruit. Again, you can see that in recruiting when you're talking to a player, when you're watching them play, when you talk to parents and you hear expectations and you hear kind of where they think they are and where they think what they can do. And you can pick up so many things just off when a kid visits campus and a player visits campus, and you're walking around and the conversation you have, like, you can realize, okay, this guy may struggle because he doesn't quite get it. Like, he's not understanding this, and this could be something that we can work with, or this may be something that it will fit somewhere and it'll be good somewhere. It's just, we put so much stock into that it's just not gonna fit here,
Yeah. So, Coach, I was at the Gasso they have this new camp. It's called Link Camp. And it's a really cool idea. They just had one a few weeks ago. It's where, college coaches, parents, and players are all in the gym together and getting asked questions and talk, practice, scrimmage some. But the Kilgore Junior College was talking to parents, and he had just had this great nugget. He said, players, you got to find the level that loves you the one that's interested in you, and then find a way to love it back.
Yeah, it's good.
And like, that's good. So my
Yep.
question to you is, what advice do you have, or can you give to coaches that have players that want to play in college, but the self-awareness, either it's with them or it's with their parents, there's a disconnect? How do we help them to see without, I mean, I even try to tell personal stories of, guys, listen, 47 seconds against SMU, play, like, really cool that I played D1 ball, but like, how can we help them?
I think testimonials are good. I mean, again, I've gone down that road myself a lot when freshmen are struggling once they get here. But I think that's tough, Coach, because I've had coaches from the area ask me that same question, and the thing they've always done that I think has been good has been they brought them out to games, and they've let them see with their own eyes kind of what is going on here at Concordia when we're playing anybody, Maryland, Baylor, UT Dallas. They come and see that, and they may not want to say it out loud, but they can see the quality and the level, and it makes it real to them. And I just think seeing it in person is so important. I think it allows them to have some perspective and to understand that just the opportunity to play college basketball in itself is an achievement, and you have to have so many things go right for you. Like, I had tremendous advantage. I didn't have physical advantages, but I had environmental advantages. I grew up in a gym. I grew up with my dad as a coach. I grew up on a bench where I was watching all the good and bad and learning how to act, how not to act. And I wasn't great at it. I was still like temperamental and not always considered, but I learned how to work. Like, and people don't get that. And so, like, to be able to, it's so hard to do it and to get it, that just getting recognized is special. But again, it's almost like a bad relationship, right? Like, you can tell them, but until you go through it, it's hard because I always say, like, when I always feel like when I talk at those events, I'm talking to everybody except that parent and their kid. You know what I mean? Like, so they're here, like, everybody in there has the same mindset. Well, he's talking to the person next to me. He's not talking to me. And so it's like, I don't know how to break that down besides come see us play and realize that we have pretty good players and that we're playing pretty good. We're playing against good players.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of I think it helps sometimes when you have high school players who are consistently playing against high level competition and can see, okay, that guy's clearly better than me.
That's a good point. Yeah.
They can see, well, okay, that guy, that's De'Aaron Fox. Okay, yeah, he's different than I am. That's Carson Edwards. You can start seeing some of that stuff. But again, I think so much of that is parental. I think a lot of it is being talked to by coaches at a young level. That's the hard part, right? By the time you get them and you're really, really working with them, you can still make impressions, you can still build, but also, it's kind of, some of it is who they are. And so getting people to understand that and accept that isn't always easy. But I think, Texas, I think the Gasso guys, like you talked about, Blue and those guys, and Sam, and they're terrific. They're really they're trying to stretch it. They're trying to in Texas. You go to the Northeast, and like, I'm talking Division III, and you're again, Andre Cook at St. Ed's. He played Division III basketball at Skidmore, and he always says up there, man, it's like if you tell somebody they're a Division III player, it's like, wow, that's really. You must be a good player. And in Texas, it's almost like a slap in the face. Or it has been in the past, and that's just the reality. And so it's changing that mindset. And again, I think when you have people like the Gasso guys who are getting coaches in front of these parents, and just I think a lot of it, honestly, Coach, is just I don't even think it's intentional. It's just lack of exposure, lack of familiarity. Anytime you're not familiar with something, you're not comfortable with it. And so I think just getting more familiar with the levels uh, and understanding what it takes to play Division II, Division III, NAI, junior college, Division I, like what that looks like. And those lower levels are a lot of times skipped uh, just because. And I get it. I mean, everybody's dream is to play Division I. I don't fault anybody for that. Like, clearly that's the goal, but it's also at some point, again, self-awareness, being able to recognize, like, this is probably where I'm going to be. And like Coach Kilgore said, fall in love with it. If somebody loves you, you better love them back, or you're going to be single your whole life.
That's good. Going back to your very first pillar, though, and the story that you had, and we kind of already talked about it, but I think a lot of those players too, obvious, like you had said, there are parts to life that's unfair. And what, like Dick DeVenzio said, that to desire fair treatment is to desire to be mediocre. And so, but so there's a part of those higher levels where your height, your wingspan, your ability. I told my players about TJ Ford the other day, and because we were talking about the next level, and if you're 6 foot or under, you got to be a little bit of a freak in some ways. And I said, guys, one of the few times I've been on ESPN is because I was on the floor when TJ Ford dunked it on a putback. And his elbow was at the rim. So Coach, you'll laugh at this. I go and I find that video on YouTube. And so I get that, but then I watch just the next clip. Well, man, Coach, I got the ball. I'm dribbling down the sideline. I turn it over and I get scored on. The very next clip, I'm driving baseline and I get my shot blocked into the 5th row. I'm like, what the crap? Like, who put this together? But that's my experience right there in a nutshell. But so I'm talking to these guys, and like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's some of the guys that, if they don't just have the physical limitations, I believe the reason they don't get to the level that they want, or it just doesn't work out, is they don't max out. They don't do everything. They do look back. Because Coach, I'll just be honest with you. You're the first person that's ever talked about their high school playing career and college. And I thought, I feel the exact same way. I've screwed up a ton in my life. My 20s were a train wreck. But the one thing I don't regret is how I trained for the game, because I don't belong at that level, but you can get there if you are lonely, give up everything, sacrifice, and have no regrets. And I think that's why we got there.
It's hard. It's hard. Like, again, I didn't take a vacation like from my freshman year of high school till I was done playing, and I didn't go on trips. I would work 6 days a week. I'd take 1 day off a week, and that was it. And that was for 8 years. And again, I'm not saying that's the way to do it. It's probably would have been a better balance, maybe.
But no, Coach, I'm going to push back on that. Like, I don't, for the goals that you had to achieve those, Coach, I don't think you have balance. I think you have to be all in.
Again, unless you are an athletic, talented freak that can just do it, like it's not. And again, it's not for everybody. And
that's the thing too. I want to address, even though you and I are talking about how it's possible and how you can do it, it's not for everybody, and that is okay. Exactly. Like, it is okay as a high school player to not want that highest level. It's fine, but don't wish, don't regret, don't sit around asking poor me why, when you take 3 weeks of vacation during the summer. I never skied because I was terrified of hurting my knees. Coach, like, you got to be that insane.
Coach, I was so ridiculous that I, in college, literally made my roommates get rid of their gaming system because I didn't want to walk in, because I felt like a video game and my eyes would mess up my jump shot. Like, I was that obsessive with, like, being so tunnel visioned into making sure everything I did aligned with giving myself an opportunity. And so again,
that's extreme.
That's extreme. No, I'm telling you, and I said some of it wasn't healthy probably, but there was such a I wasn't going water skiing. I've been to like 2 theme parks in my life. I didn't have a whole lot of layers to what I was doing because I was so, and it got ingrained in me. You know, my dad was a coach, and he always talked about it's got to be an obsession, not a hobby. I had an older cousin who's coaching, who does a lot of these individual camps now, Coach V, and I grew up with him, and he was, you know, all about working. So I had good people around me to help me understand that mindset. But again, it's not, and that's what we tell our guys, like, and it's okay. Like, exactly. It's okay. I'm not saying you have to do that. That doesn't have to be your life, but again, be self-aware and set realistic expectations based on what you're willing to put in. And if you're not willing to, don't be that person that is griping because they didn't get out, but they didn't put in. It's not like and that's where I tell my guys, like, I don't have sympathy for those people because I've been that person. And so I'm not gonna like feel for you. I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you you deserve this and this, because I know from my own personal life what I had to give up to get to a level that, you know, not many people, and to have a moderate level of success at that level, like to you know, to be able to be on the floor with like you said, guys I had no business being on the floor with. I mean, you ask guys that, I remember some of the, when I showed up at the Tech Rec Center as a freshman, I remember some of the guys later telling me, like Darvin Ham and Corey, some of those guys saying, man, this is Mr. Basketball. I walk in, I'm 185 pounds.
Coach, my mom called me one time as my freshman or sophomore year because the message boards were starting to come out, you know, online. And I had played up at the Student Life Center.
Yeah.
And on the message boards, people that had played against me that day said, this guy is on our team.
Right.
Like, and my mom called me and said, hey, what are you doing at the rec that makes people think you can't play there? Like, she was so
just say, Mom, I'm just playing my game.
I'm kind of just up there to have fun, and I got this bullseye target. But you're right, man. You're exactly right.
So no, it's again, and again, ultimately it goes back to, it helped shape me now, because as a coach, I try to have that, you know, that same mindset with a little more obvious perspective. One thing, I try to pass that, what we're talking about, onto our players, and just try to get them to wrap it. It's nothing better than when a guy gets finished, and they do have a chance to go play professionally. We've had a couple that have had an opportunity that are still pursuing it, and that's great. And the ones that don't, it's like, no, I'm ready to move on and do this and this. And it's like, man, that's a win, because you're not drifting, you're not holding on to something that's not there to hold on to. You're moving on, and that is a good feeling as a coach, to know you helped somebody reach that and be okay with where they're going next.
And we can't put our expectations on the players either.
No.
Just because I see that this kid has ability, athletically or skill wise, he has a drive, a love, and a passion, and I believe that he could play. My first thought goes to the best player that our school's ever had. His name was Dalton Standish. He graduated 5 years ago, 2,700 points, 435 threes over his career. Just a machine, averaged 28 for 2 years in a row. But after his sophomore year, I asked, hey, Dalton, you know, let's start thinking about this. And he said, Coach, I don't want to play in college. And my heart kind of like, why are you, in my head, I'm thinking, you work so hard. Like he gave up what we gave up. And I said, well, Dalton, why are you doing everything that you do? He's like, I just want to be a great high school player. That's all I want to do. And I had to accept that. And then, but you know what it turned into was extreme respect for that, because it's pure, you know, instead of a carrot dangling out in front. It's pure. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot360, the future of basketball is here. 96 points a game. You've averaged that, over multiple years. So it's not just you had one great team, lightning in a bottle. You've been able to establish that type of culture with your team. So your favorite style to play and teach, what is it?
It's that. I mean, I grew up, my father, like I touched on, was a high school coach in San Antonio, and he got a job at it was East Central High School, and he got it in the early 80s. And when he took over, it was not a very good program. It was a program that had physical talent, but they were always undersized. They were always a smaller team, and he was playing against bigger, more physical teams. And after 2 to 3 years being there, we had moderate success. He came up with the idea of putting this group of guys in. He called them the Wild Bunch, and it was 5 guys. He'd put them in for a couple minutes, and they'd get out there and press and go and run, and the crowd would get so excited about that part of the game they couldn't wait for the Wild Bunch to come in. They would all kind of watch, and then when they came in, all of a sudden they were it's like a new energy went into it, and something clicked in him, and he said, I'm just going to do that. That's kind of what we're going to do as a team, because that's kind of what our personnel is anyway. It makes sense. And so I think in 1984, 85, maybe he adopted that. And so from there, he took like that school and that program to heights that it had never probably imagined it would get to, as far as the level of success they were able to have, not only like from a school standpoint, but what it did for the community, what it did to the city of San Antonio, how it kind of revolutionized the way basketball was played, and it was so different. And so I saw that, and it just always stuck with me. I saw it as a kid. I saw it when I played in it, and we had success with it. And it was always a way that I felt like gave a player the most opportunity to express themselves and be creative and play just kind of the game the way I felt like it should be played. And so, in college, I played a different style, had success. I just knew that when I started coaching, on my own, when that opportunity came, this is what I wanted to do. Now, how I would do it and the ways I'd go about it were going to be probably different than what we did in high school, and they are different. But the mindset's the same of pressuring for 94 feet, make or miss, and that's why response is so important to us as far as our that culture pie talked
There's
about.
No time to dream.
No, if you're celebrating a make, you're in trouble. If you're mourning a miss, you're in trouble. We spend a lot of time. My assistant a couple of years ago did a defensive breakdown and statted, where a majority of our turnovers were happening, where a majority of our our positive plays, and so much came to our ability to guard after the initial transition, after make miss. Like the longer it took guys to get the ball in balance, the more they struggled, the more success we had. And so we just, with our guys, we talk ad nauseum about getting to the next play because of how it impacts what we're trying to do defensively. And so, our offense comes a lot of times, if we're good, it should come from our defense. We should be able to turn eyeball turnovers into easier baskets, but we're going to practice that way. It's kind of why, again, the gassing out thing fits with us, because of the urgency of how we play. You just don't have time to relax and hope. Again, I mean, it like you said when we first started, as a young coach, you feel like it's going to work and you're going to beat everybody and it's going to be perfect, and you realize along the way, man, there's a lot of flaws to it, and there's a lot of you will. I've been humbled more than any coach probably needs to be humbled doing it, but I believe in it, and I think it's a fun way to play. I think it allows players to really get the most. Again, you got to recruit the players that fit it, but they get the most out of who they are, and it's not for everybody. People. We recruit guys say they want to press and they want to do that. And when we're doing it and they realize, oh crap, you mean like we're doing this for 94 feet.
They don't realize how hard playing fast at the speed you're talking about is. Every coach says, I want to play fast.
Right.
How fast?
Yeah, how fast? Exactly. Like, right. And the other thing I learned from my dad and being around it is the idea that you have to be all in. It's hard if you're really going to do it. Like, you got to be willing. We're going all in. Like, rain, shine, whatever, win, loss, the minute you kind of, because it's all about imposing your will on somebody. That's what it, for us, it's all about. We're going to do our best. Okay, not always successful. We're going to do our best to impose our will. Now, you may beat us at it, but we're going to impose our will, or try to, on the game and influence how it's played. So it's played on our terms. And if you're better than us, which, as I've said earlier, there were 10 games in a row last year where teams were better than us at it, then hats off. And we got to figure out why. But it's not going to be, we can't, because again, players are going to fight it because it is hard and it is different. And I feel like the moment you kind of budge and you kind of start, we're going to fall back, we're going to, you can kind of lose that. And so it's just kind of a battle of it's just a mindset, and it's something we work on every day. It maybe came to our practice, you would see it's just kind of who at this point, the one thing I feel like we've been able to establish in the time I've been here is that kind of takes care of itself. Like as far as the guys understanding how we practice, how we go about playing, like it's still, we work on it, but it's not the struggle that it was obviously when you first get someplace and you're doing something different.
How long are your players able to be on the floor at any given time?
We looked at that's a good question. We've dabbled with 3 minutes, 4 minutes. We've looked at different periods. I think an indicator we talked to our guys about, really, if we're playing as hard as we should in a 40-minute game, you should be able to play probably 23 to 24 minutes.
Yep,
it's probably right. Like physically, if you're really gonna do what we're asking, and then now with that means you got to sacrifice, because that means the minutes you're playing are lessened, and you're not playing 32, 33 minutes.
But the possessions are more. So do you talk about that part? Because if they can grasp that and stop looking at the clock,
right,
they'll realize I can play for 24 minutes, but possibly get a quarter more possessions than what the dude down the road, down the highway is getting, playing 40 minutes a game, 35 minutes a game.
Yeah, no, that's good. We probably haven't focused on that enough, but I like that, and I'm going to use that, because that is no, that's good. No, that's something that it's a perspective that we probably haven't touched on enough, but I like it.
Yeah. My question then is, because I'm really excited to hear more about what you're doing. What are some of your influences? Maybe obviously your dad, but then also other systems that you've seen that you're kind of pulling from, or is this just something like your dad made it up, and then what are some things you're pulling from?
No, there's multiple. My dad, obviously, we talked about. My cousin, Coach Van Lanningham, Coach V, he coached at McMurray back in the mid '90s, and he did an unbelievable job. Then he was a head coach at Our Lady Lake for a little while. Did a great job with it there. And there's him playing for my dad. He took some of what my dad did and put his own spin on it, and from some of the mentors he had. And so I borrowed from him. We went up and played Whitman College 5-6 years ago, and Coach, we were up there in a classic, and we played on a Friday night. We beat I forget the team we beat. It was a team that was a decent team, and we played well. We shot it great, and we played and I felt pretty good about it. Kind of that. It was open night, felt good about it. Well, I'd never seen Whitman play. I just had heard they were really good, and they've always been competitive and whatever. So I remember they were playing Sil Ross after us that night, and I remember I sat up in the stands and thought, "Oh my Lord, like we got no chance. Like these guys are really good. Like, man, I don't know if we're ready for this." And so we played them the next night, and I mean, Coach, they were just like, I've never felt more helpless on a bench, because they were just coming at you, and they were relentless, and they were just like, and it was like, man, these guys, like, props. Like, after all I could say, I mean, like that was impressive. Again, I was aware enough to know, like, okay, he is doing a much better job at this than I am, so I need to talk to him, and he's been great. I'm drawing a blank right now with the coach's name, but spent that off season. I spent time on the phone with him, talking about kind of what they do, his offense as well, and just kind of how he taught stuff. And I went and studied their film on synergy that year. I mean, I was like, man, we gotta figure this, because that, in my mind, is how we want to. I want to, like, that's what we want to look like, and how do we get to that point? And so I was not. It was not. I had no issue calling him and trying to pick his brain and learn from him. So him, Jeff Evans, a coach at Amarillo, Colorado High School. He's a friend, but also, like, he's somebody who I get a lot from. I mean, he is so good at what he does, and he is so. I mean, the man's, what he does with what he has is off the charts. And if you see his team play, and it's phenomenal how hard they play, how the standard he holds them to. There's so many things he does, from how he watches film, how he coaches. Like, there are so many pieces of why he wins at the level he does, that he's somebody. Again, we're at this point. I talked to him yesterday. We hadn't talked in 2 weeks. I think it's probably the longest he mentioned, probably the longest we'd gone in 6 years without talking to each other. And so he's a friend as much as anything, but he's also somebody who is really, really. Our initial relationship started because of our love for pressure basketball and playing Uptempo. And so, he's good. So I try to stay in touch with those guys. I've got on the phone with Vince Wahlberg, and I've talked to him and tried to, learn from him, but immediate contacts and immediate, in the past 3 to 4 years, those guys have really influenced me. And anytime we play somebody who's good at what they do, last year we played Trinity down in San Antonio. Man, it's funny. We beat Incarnate Word to start our open season. I should be a Division I opponent. Everybody's texting me and, well, you guys are this and that, and tell our guys, be careful, man, because we're playing a really good team here in 3 days. And it was funny, because that was on like a Tuesday night, and whenever we're driving back, we're eating pizza, everybody's excited. We're really good, we think. And Saturday, the game was at 3. By like 4:30, we were down 30 plus. And the reality had set in. It was good for our guys, because, like, hey, fellas, just so you know, like, that was Division I. These are Division III players. Like, this is a good level. So now you're seeing it. But his Coach Smith just does such a great job with his pace offensively. His synergy numbers with his offense under 4 seconds or something is off the chart. How well and how fast they play. So I'll reach out to him and talk to him. I don't, at this point, man, I don't have much ego left in me, and so I'm kind of all ego.
You really
I'm kind of egoed out.
Yeah, but it's a good nugget though. When you're playing against, even playing against opponents, if it's your level or not, and they do something that you like, they do something that makes you feel like, I mean, I've looked over at my assistants before and go, man, that was nice. I like that. Yeah. But then have the humility, like you're talking about, to call them up. And that is a great thing about this coaches fraternity that we're a part of, is the willingness for so many to share. My next question though is like because going back to coming to faith, brought that, Hoff power style pressing. That's what we were doing with Wes Watson and McKinney, and makes or miss. We were in it, read or rotate and dribble drive motion. So loving it. But then, Coach, I wanted to go faster, and so I started looking out to see who are in my opinion, the fastest of the fast. How crazy can you get this?
Yes.
And you turn to Grinnell.
Yeah.
And you turn to Greenville.
Yep. I've spoke to those guys. Yeah.
How much of that style or system are you incorporating? Do you ever dabble with the shifts? Because the shifts are extreme. Yeah.
I've dabbled with I haven't necessarily dabbled with even though I would love to. One thing me and Coach Evans talk about is how, and this is what my dad was really great at. I don't know if he meant to be, but like being resolute with what you're doing and knowing it's going to be this, and there's beauty and simplicity, and we're going to do it. And I remember talking to Grinnell, maybe the son at the time,
Coach Arsenault.
Maybe Coach Arsenault, a while back, and just kind of what they did and the simplicity behind it and how good it was. I've never had the courage to just do that necessarily, but we have dabbled during the COVID year. We were having such a difficult time getting in practices. We were playing with masks on, and we were still trying to press. It was crazy. Like we were playing less games than most opponents. We were having guys. We were following the guidelines very, very strangely, which I was fine with, which was good. It was just making it challenging in games, and so we were playing. I forget who we were playing. Maybe at Sul Ross or something. And we late in the game, we kind of started doing the mass sub. Offense for defense for offense. We went from being down 6 with a minute and a half, and we won the game. And I'm like, you know what? What if we did that for 40 minutes? What if we just constantly sub defense? That would be kind of fun and different. And let's experiment with it because it's COVID year. What does it matter at this point? And so we dabbled with it a little bit. Haven't gone back to it. I don't know if I could. I think again, it's something I think you got to be all in with. I know there was a women's coach in our league at Louisiana College, and he did it, and he had a lot of success with it. He went to multiple NCAA tournaments, and his group was fun to watch. And he was all in with it. And I know I'm not ready to be all in to that level, and so I haven't committed to it.
And I'm right where you are too, because those some of those tougher years that I've had before, I went there. I even did a parent meeting before the season about the shifts, getting parents on board. We're a 5A tap school. This is the purest style, and I believe this. It's the purest style of basketball that there is, because when you take the fear for a player of I'm on the bench, when am I going to go in? You take that away because they know there's a shift chart that you're up soon. When you take the fear of when am I going to get pulled out of the game off the table, they know they're going to come out. In my opinion, you get the fastest, most chaotic, and clear-headed players. So I witnessed it. We were 6-1 doing it, averaging 94 points a game, and the purity, man, of seeing the joy from guys 12 down, all being a part of the game. You're better players, being in. But that's where we went back to the very beginning. Can you convince them that don't look at time, look at possessions? You are playing more possessions. But Coach, I think at the high school level, it's difficult because you add in football players, right? And then all of a sudden the chemistry that you have is so important with that style. And then if some of your better players start to think, you know what, I'm not into this getting the same amount of time as 12, it fractures. And I don't think I was ever close to getting fired, but I did have a meeting with my AD after that year. And about you can't do that. And here's another thing too with that style of play. I mean, we called it wild. 2 on the ball, 2 interceptors, 1 safety, everywhere. Always, like no stopping. I loved it. I'm the kind of personality that, especially once you see it work, we were down 20 game, we won by 20.
Yeah, it's fun,
oh, Coach, it's like I've never done crack, but I would imagine that's what it's like. Like, this is great. How can I go back? Like, that's what I felt. But the defensive side of it, this is one thing that's helped me. I think players and parents, they may not be able to see everything that we see, but they have to be able to understand to a point.
Right.
And when our football coach, whose kid played on our team, asked the kid to ask me defensively, what's our purpose? What's our goal? Do you not see it? We're turning them over 30 times a game.
Right.
And then if they're scoring, it's super quick. So we didn't even care about that.
Right.
Just get the ball back. They couldn't see it, and neither could my AD. And so like you, I've just had to choose what's the fastest we can go that helps us win, but it's not to the point where we're losing a sense of what I guess what basketball is, or I don't know
what it's supposed to be, quote unquote. We played the COVID fall that year. This was 2019. We went up to Pacific, and they were doing it. They were all in, and I remember watching on film and just being extremely concerned about how we were going to combat this. Because I mean, it is, and I'm watching it also kind of envious a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like man, this is fun. Like this is it, you know. And so we played them that night in the first half. They were drove us. We ended up coming back and finding a way to win, but also like we kind of had better players, you know, that kind of helped us with that. And the system allowed him at that time to be in games, not necessarily just with us, but in general with opponents that he probably didn't belong in games with. And I think that's the great thing. It's kind of like I don't know, I've always thought if you could do it right, it's kind of the great equalizer, right? Like it's kind of like the air raid whenever Mike Leach first got to Tech. Like that equalized the talent gap. That allowed Texas Tech to move up as high as number 2 or 3 in the country because it spread everything out.
Yeah.
And it created more space. It allowed for, and it was simple. It allowed for more opportunities. It allowed now, as time has gone, teams with bigger player, more athletes, whatever, got that implemented, and now that advantage was kind of gone that you had before. And so it's like, I think with that, if you have the right pieces, I think what it does, it allows you to stay in some games. And I think it also allows you to avoid losing games you shouldn't lose. Because I think it could also, like, it allows, if you have better players, I don't think it allows teams to stay in games because you're forcing them, you're imposing your will.
I think the better team is going to win almost all the time. And if it's not them, then that's what's going to happen. But if it is them, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
But then there's also, like, if you watch some of those videos from back in the day, it's in the locker room, it's the idea of, guys, we're not going to talk about winning and losing. Hey, there's people that pay to watch you play. Let's put on a show.
Let's
and
have
the pistol Pete in me, is one of my idol. Like, I love that. But again, going back to you, because behind my little plaque there, all my Grinnell books are back there. There's about 6 of them. And I even read a book about how to do it down through your junior high. It's called the Mongoose System. It's actually a brilliant basketball book on how to teach pressing shifts offense to young kids, 3rd grade all the way up. But going back to you, what defensively have you done to be able to, where you have the tempo that you want, but you're not just giving up layups like that?
Oh, I think, well, some of it is we are a little more conservative off misses. I think, I mean, we still press, but it's usually we usually have assigned ball stops and guys filling lanes. We've done a couple of different missed shot defenses where we've kind of pressed, almost run a defensive break off of an offensive miss, where we're ball stopping, we're covering basket, ball side, we're covering spots, and then we've also run kind of a 2-2-1 off misses, because we there was a while we were running 2-2-1 on makes and misses. I remember we went down to A&M Corpus. It was an exhibition game. We went down there that fall 2019, and we lost. But in the game, I think we forced 49 turnovers, and it was because we were just so locked into kind of our spots and where we were playing. And so we try to be really aggressive, before the catch. And then once the ball gets in half court, we're still pressuring, but we also spend a decent amount of time in practice working on half court defense. Which I don't know. That's Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. How do you help them with the mentality of, we want to take chances and help it? Because I think a lot of players, especially if they're terrified of making a mistake from their coach, if the culture is, I make a mistake, I'm probably coming out or I'm done.
Yeah.
I mean, in that style, you need them to be. How do you create the aggressiveness that you want?
I think it's an everyday practice mindset. It's working on conversion sequences. It's playing 3-on-3 from a conversion space. It's 4-on-4 continuous. It's setting up a lot of your defensive drills to dictate that. But also, I think it's communication. I think it's talking to the guys about why you will come out of a game and why, and it's not going to be from missing a shot or necessarily taking a risk. It's going to be from not playing hard.
Yeah.
And not we just yell constantly, get ahead of the ball, sprint ahead of the ball. Like we're constantly on them about just not loafing, like getting ahead, and we want to be aggressive early, and then we always tell them let's be aggressive early, and we'll scale back. Like we can fix some of that. We can fix those uncalculated risks that are being taken. We can have you understand, okay, this is why you want to go here on a blindside trap, and why we want to rotate behind it, and how we need to fill spaces on that. But early on, we're not going to get caught in correcting that. Like we're not going to correct guys running through a lane at the wrong time or getting out of position on inbounds, or maybe bumping on an inbound and foul. Like we're not going to. The first 2 weeks of practice, we're not correcting any of that. We're just trying to get them to think about one thing, and that's just playing as hard as you can play on defense, and making sure we try to protect the paint once we get across half court, and then offensively getting to the paint and playing unselfish. And so I think one, on the offensive side thing that has been helpful for some of our players is we don't necessarily. I don't think guys feel pressure to make shots. I think it's maybe the same thing with defense. They don't think they feel pressure about not taking chances, because we usually don't sub it unless you are taking bad shots, or unless you're, unless you're, if you haven't put the time in to get the shots. But we're not. I think it's emphasis, and for us, so much about what we emphasize is, are you playing hard? And that's step one, and then we're going to define that, what we're looking for, and we're going to show you with guys who have been here, this is what it looks like, and this is what's expected. Now, I think if you get too technical too early, you can you take away some of that aggressiveness.
That's a good point.
I think if they're thinking about stepping here, coming here, my which foot's up, which foot's back, I think if you can kind of really stunt growth. And so it's like, no, let's show what our footwork looks like, but let's not harp on it. Let's harp on you weren't sprinting back to get ahead, or you didn't come over and trap and come up and take a chance, or that ball went to the basket and you weren't on your guy immediately making the inbound tough. That's in our system, that's a loss. That's like giving up a layup. If we allow the ball to go through the net and they can bring it in uncontested, that's an L. And so it's like, that you have to, we want to celebrate that. We want to value that. We want to make sure they know that is like big to what we're doing. And again, that's where my assistant helps, and he's able to put together some statistical numbers that show them clearly. It's not just because we want to, but it leads to these outcomes.
Yeah, it's kind of like full speed effort, but with bad footwork is way better than perfect footwork half speed.
Yeah, if you're going to press,
you'll take that. Yeah, like you'll take the first one all day long, and because the other you can work with. Yeah,
you can fix it. You can fix. You can show film. You can bring them in.
Yeah.
You can. You're an individuals. You can fix that. What you can't fix is somebody who does. If you're gonna try to play this way, you can't fix somebody who's not understanding the idea of conversion and the idea of making inbounds difficult, and the idea of sprinting to get ahead of the ball. Like if you don't do that, little things, and showing your go, we talk a lot about basically jabbing and retreating off the ball. So we're constantly, looks like five guys are guarding one, and we're constantly foot faking. Just little things that like these are pillars that we want to be good at, and then we'll really try to dive into. Which is why early on, I think it's part of the reason we struggle early in the season a lot of times, because we're so focused on that part of it that it probably leaves us a little less prepared in other aspects of our game.
One more thing. So offensively, because you attack the paint so well, and I would imagine the pace you're playing in space more, you probably utilize the 3-point line pretty well. Is there a certain amount of attempts you're trying to get every game, or is it just when they're there, take them, you don't focus too much? Yeah.
It's when they're there. We've really tried to work a lot recently on the offensive side of playing off two, a lot of Nashes and Barclays, even though I've been told I need to update those names because their players don't really know who Barkley is and don't know Nash.
They need to adjust, Coach. Yeah. Those names are fine.
So we do, and we work. The thing, and I think you would understand this as a former guard and guy who handled and played the way you did. The idea of, like, we want our guys off the ball to know where to go based off penetration. So we will X different spots on the floor. We'll put squares for like spacing, where we're going for our initial spacing, because we have our offensive flow, as we call it, space, action, movement. We want to make sure every time we're on offense, we have checklists. We get our spacing right, whatever our action is, we execute, and then we move based off that action. And so we're constantly breaking that down. And so we'll have our boxes for our spacing, and then we have different X's on the floor for our action or for our movement, so that once we create an advantage, the other four guys know where to go, which I think really empowers the ball handler. Because if I have an advantage, and so many times you hear coaches talk, and I used to talk about, get to your spot. Okay, we have an advantage, play in space and do a one more. But I don't think, like, I want to construct that so our guys understand what that looks like. And then once they know what that looks like, we'll let the flow of play happen, but create structure in that flow. Because I don't know if guys can create that structure on their own out of advantages. So we want to really, really spend time, and we spend a ton of time in practice working on getting to advantage spots. And we work a lot on the push-pull idea of the ball is dribbled at you, pushing away, but dribbled away, pulling behind, and filling behind on all penetrations. And we really, whenever we get flowing, we've had some offensive success with doing minimal of actions, but being pretty good at times of getting to our. We yell acknowledge and get to your X's,
get the spots, and
get to these designated spots, and don't watch. Like, the ball's dribbled, you have a job to do. When that ball is dribbled away from you, you are constantly moving, but moving with intention.
That's right.
Because I don't want to tell them just move and get open.
Coach, you don't want to have Will Ferrell going rover, in the middle of the court,
right. Yeah, exactly.
Semi-pro.
Yes, you don't want to have Jackie Moon.
That's right.
And so
I'm going rover, Coach. You will not go rover.
You want to minimize rover.
Yeah.
And so we spend, so a lot of our offense is based on that, and we've really adopted that the last 2 years, and I think it's been something that I think, again, I'm always looking to tweak and get better at. But during the pandemic, I was able to spend a lot of time, like a lot of coaches, studying and getting on Zooms and being around people who could help me with some of this, and or watching people, and not necessarily being around them, but watching people and getting better. So I believe in that, because I think that movement stuff is applicable to anything you do. I think everything you do in basketball, you're trying to get an advantage, whatever you run offensively. It's just when you have the advantage, do your players know what to do and where to go? And if they do, then I feel like offensively, you're going to have a really good opportunity to be successful.
I think one thing I've learned from running less plays, but putting concepts together for players to make plays, is that it's not as simple as just letting them attack or be aggressive. The organization and the structure that you have to truly play fast and free, with players just creating on their own. If there's no structure, they will be all over each other in a heartbeat, 100%. And advantages will disappear.
100%.
So, Coach, it takes a lot of control to play fast.
It takes. We say we want to try to structure every unstructured situation. So whether it's turnovers, whether it's advantage, whether it's offensive rebound, whatever is unstructured, we want the guys to know where to get. We don't want to become structured from the standpoint of we're setting up and organizing, but we want to have structure behind that. So that I don't think, again, like you said, I don't think you can keep an advantage if you don't. I think you're going to shrink gaps. You're going to run into each other. You're not going to have the spacing you need.
Cut at the wrong time, make the wrong read. Yeah. Coach, I'm going to steal that. Being structured in unstructured moments, like that. That's really good. It's really good. Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballology. What's your BSA score? The Ballology Skills Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NAIA, NJCAA, and a growing number of NCAA coaches to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 4-minute, 40-shot test can be taken free today on the Ballology mobile app. Elevate your game. So you've been at Concordia for 17 years now. You got, right? Is that correct?
I think so, yeah. I get lost.
Yeah. That's what I looked. So 17 years or so. And you got Butterfield at UTD that's been there for a long time. There's amazing coaches at that D3 level, especially in Texas. With your playing background, I would imagine over the years you've had opportunities. What has kept you there? And I think I'm asking this for myself as 10 years at Grapevine Faith, with people asking me that question before, what's kept me here? What has helped you to make kind of the big time where you are?
I think kind of always having that mindset. I think part of, and I don't know, I guess I never thought about it from this standpoint, but I think part of being successful as a player is, like we said, there's a lot of lonely times, and you got to make where you are important to stay there. And maybe some of that's traveled with me, is always feeling like if I'm in a gym in July by myself, working out, that's the place to be. I had a football coach when I was at Tech as a freshman. I remember I think it was Coach Winder, maybe, or one of the coaches. He was an old school military guy, and he called me over and he's like, Bonewitz, I can tell you one thing. Just know, remember this bit of advice: wherever you are tonight, that's where the party is. And it was like, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't get it, but then I got it. Like it's just like making where you are what it is. And I don't think I think part of it is I like where I work, probably as you do. You like the administration, you like the people you work with, you like the players you work with. I live in a terrific city. I get to do what I love doing. I get to coach. Coaching is coaching. Yeah, there's advantages to being at different levels, no doubt. But at the same time, as a head coach, you have autonomy to kind of create your schedule and do things kind of how you want to do. And once you've done that for a while, maybe there's a little bit of fear or just or stubbornness of not wanting to give that up. And again, I think you can get better wherever you are if you're willing to invest in what you're doing. Like if you're around smarter people, and of course can't help but get better. But that's why fortunate to have a good assistant who is really good and smart in a lot of ways and better in a lot of ways than I am at some of this. And then choosing people to surround yourself with, coaches and friends who also make you think outside the box and get uncomfortable. So I think perspective is important. And I think, realizing that, I live in a great city, and I get to here in a couple of weekends. I don't get to do much, but I'll be at ACL for a weekend and enjoying 2 or 3 days before we get going. And I'll drive home this evening. And if I want to pick up food from somewhere, there's a lot of good dining options in Austin. And there's just a lot of pluses. And again, ultimately, I get to coach, and I get to, and the guys we work with and coach it's fun. Like you have driven players who you can coach, and that's cool. It's fun. Like we don't, not that there's not egos. And because players are, and I want guys to have egos, or when I say healthy ego, like competitive ego. Like I want guys that think, that's good. Like, but it's also, it's cool. We have guys that are balancing having a job and classes and having to make sacrifices that I didn't know as a player. I tell them all the time, like, you guys are so much tougher than what I was. What you're having to do and how you're having to manage and navigate this and what we're asking you to do, that's impressive. And so it's good. I have no, especially as I get older, like I'm not in a rush to try to get somewhere to just because I think I have to. If an opportunity were to ever come, that would be like no-brainer opportunity for sure, but I'm not pounding the streets. And it's funny when people always are have friends or people have asked like that question, but almost in a way that's like why haven't, almost like in a negative way, you know?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
almost like, you know, like I get
What's
like,
wrong with you?
yeah, it's almost like, man, you don't, I'm like, I can list off 10 reasons why what I'm doing is probably, you know, more enjoyable than what you're doing. And you know, I think I always too, it's good to think about what somebody who has a job, again, me and Coach Cook talk about this a lot, with somebody who has a job that you think they like and you would they trade with you? And a lot of times they probably would, you know, and you just don't think it, you don't think about it that way, because sometimes you can get your ego and get caught up and think about how, you know, some different opportunities that would be out there. And like I said, I'm lucky. I work with multiple different university presidents have been really good to me. They allow me to mess up a lot. My AD allows me to mess up a lot and learn and get better, and knows that, you know, and understand that we're trying to do things the right way, and you know, and build something that we've been able to stay with for a while. So it's a long answer, but
no, it's
I'm
good.
not sure I answered it, but yeah, I mean, I'm and then, like you said, it's great coaching, and it's competitive. I mean, we're coaching against guys. It's you know, it's at a point now where when I first got in the league, there was these, you know, older coaches who you know, I had known of or got to know, and it was like, man, these guys, Coach Rushing at Louisiana College, and Coach DeWeese, and Coach Butterfield, and Coach Holmes, and McMurray. You can go, you know, all these guys, and then you also become that guy, and you all, you know, not that I've had that level of success, but you become that older, that veteran, I guess. And then you see the younger guys coming up who are working really hard, and who, you know, you're going to have to continue to stay on it. Otherwise, you can become non-relevant pretty quick. And I think that's at any level. And so that's part of it too. And that's where, again, I think you got to have a good assistant, and a young assistant who helps drive that, because it's, as you get older, it is tough to continue to do that.
It also sounds like, and I like to think that I'm in the same place, where there's a level of contentment with what you're doing, and that's not a negative word.
No,
like that.
Right.
You feel like you're where you're supposed to be,
correct,
and you're good with that. It's not, what's the other? It's not complacency.
Exactly. There's a difference, right?
There is a difference.
Like complacency, you're you're sitting back in a recliner and you got your feet up and you're just
don't
enjoying.
Challenge me. I don't want to work hard. I want to do it. No. Contentment is, I love where I am. I love the people. I love the administration, and also I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. But like you said, if a door opens that I truly feel this was meant for me, that's different. But man, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's as again, it goes back to, as a person, you can grow. And that's kind of the Viktor Frankl Man's Search for Meaning kind. You can grow in any environment if you just allow if you have the right mindset and the right approach to it. Some people, well, it's all perspective. And so I can grow here if I'm willing to surround myself with good people and willing to invest in areas I need to invest in. I'm willing to stretch myself. Then I don't feel like, content is not it's a good thing. It means you found some place that you feel like you're supposed to be at, where you feel like you can grow, and then once either that becomes complacency or it becomes negative, then I think it's time you got to start, because then it's not fair to your players, it's not fair to your coach, it's not fair to the university. Once that complacency kicks in, and that's something I'm trying to be really, really conscious of, to make sure you want to find a little bit of balance in life, a little bit as you get older, but you want to make sure you don't lose that edge or that fire to like grow and keep getting better. And so I think it's a daily challenge for a lot of us.
Coach, the speed round is going to help us to know you. We know about your basketball game, but it may be more about you as a person. You ready?
I'm ready.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Rocky Road.
How many
probably vegan Rocky Road at this point in my life.
Really? You kind of gone that way?
I've gone that way. People kind of call me, speaking of fraudulent, kind of fraudulent when I tell them about 70 to 80% on that track. But
Coach, you're either all in or you're nothing.
Yeah, I know. So yeah.
Okay. How many of hours of sleep do you need?
At this point in my life, probably between 6. I can 8. If I get 8, I'm really good. 6, I can function. If I get less than 6, recovery for me is a lot harder. Like I'll struggle a lot more if I'm under that 6 number.
Best basketball movie of all time?
I mean, it's probably Hoosiers. I mean, as much as like I was a Above the Rim fan, he got
Loved
me.
it.
White
Loved
Man
it.
Can't Jump. Like all those, even the pistol, the old school
Yep.
Pete Maravich. Blue Chips was fine, but I mean, just from the cinematic, what it meant at the time. The guy wore a sweater. Gene Hackman wore a sweater like my dad did for many years. There's a lot of connect to it. So, everybody, when you watch it, Jimmy Chip was kind of who you strive to. And the coach is like stubborn. All of it, there's so much about it that to this day, if it's on, I'll watch I'll watch a little bit of it.
For high school shot clock or no shot clock?
I'm for it. Yeah. I have a lot of high school coaching friends who are against it, and I understand. I just think, we've done it. We've used it. We've hosted a beginning of the year high school classic the last 2 to 3 years, and 2 of those years we used the shot clock. And I just like the flow of the game is clean. I think it allows for quicker decision making. I think the game moves at a better pace. I think it just adds an element that is kind of missing right now.
Yeah, player development is the part of it that.
What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, well, I'm for it for the player development.
Yeah,
I think it'll force us as coaches to spend more time developing the individuals, less time in sets or in long continuities.
Yeah.
And where because that's the beauty of our game. At any given time, any of the 5 need to be able to do something with it.
Correct. Yeah.
And so for development, from the speed standpoint, I'm not going to see it anyway. Now,
right.
I would, because we run more of a pressure zone now that allows us to keep our speed, but like you said, we still have paint presence. Our guys are able to be quick and take chances. But if my assistant coach hates when I say this, but if we play too good of defense, then they can have the ball for 45 seconds to a minute.
Right.
That wears me out, and I'll look at them. I'll be like, it's too good. Like we're playing too good. I want the possession to be shorter.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Texting or talking?
Ooh, that's tough. I'm probably still lean. Man, my wife would say, yeah, it's texting. I think for recruitment, it's texting. I as far as connecting and I feel like talking is obviously more meaningful, deeper, all that. But I feel like if you professionally, you're trying to get to somebody, texting and also so as some of my friends would say, I got a pretty short attention span, so texting is probably conversation I can kind of drift sometimes. So yeah, texting.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas. Yeah.
In basketball, who is the GOAT?
Man, I would say, I argue with people all the time. I would go, as he's getting older, it's harder to argue, but I've said LeBron. I think what he's done, his ability to play all 5 positions and guard all 5 positions and manipulate a game the way he's been able to manipulate it over his career and do it against the physicality of what he sees. I know maybe not the fouling and
it's still super. It's still physical.
It's still and like at the end of the day, like that was great in the 80s, but those are fouls. Like, I mean, that's like, it's good and all, but like, that's still a foul. And like LeBron wouldn't have been physically affected by it. He's just such a
Oh,
such a freak, and you know what who he's been able to take to the finals, some of the performances he's put on.
yeah.
And I grew up in the Jordan era, and I was a Larry Bird kid growing up. You know, I was my guy, and then watching Jordan, I was Come Fly With Me, and Jordan was the guy. You know, like I never thought you'd see another. But when you think about the fact that LeBron is basically Karl Malone's size,
Yeah.
but Magic, you know, people compare him to Jordan all the time. To me, he's more of a Magic Johnson type of guy. He's
More athletic beast Magic. Yeah.
He's a pass. In fact, he's going to be the all-time scoring leader, and he's really a pass-first player.
Yes, he defers to his teammates quite a bit. Yeah,
and it's not so much that it's because I don't think he's scared of the moment.
No,
I just think he's his basketball IQ. Again, I think if he wanted to be, he could have been the greatest point guard to play the game, because he manipulates everything, and he you know, whatever the flaws, whatever, but you can tell he does have a certain joy when he plays of getting other guys connected and playing. Now, maybe not the same joy that Magic showed or something like that, but there's a certain way that he plays where he is almost like a pass first guy. And so to do that, to take some of those Cavs teams he took to the finals.
Yeah, no doubt. Against great competition too.
Against great competition, and to lose. People always somebody lost in the finals, but he's losing to the Warriors. He's losing to the Spurs, like all time.
The Pistons were at their heyday, knocking him out. Like, yeah.
And then the performance he put on against the Pistons in that game 6 or whatever, where he closed them out and he scored 25 straight points, whatever it was, and then again to take the other, and maybe this is something you could say, well, he's brought some of this on, but he's also the only guy that I can think of that's moved to the 3 different franchises and done it with multiple coaches in multiple systems. And when he's left that previous place, it's a weak argument. When he's left that previous place, their record has dropped significantly more. His impact is significantly greater. So, I mean, there are some things that I do. There are times when I watch him and you wish he would be have a little more, quote unquote, you know, killer or whatever.
No doubt.
But I think just from the ability to play and do the stuff he does, people that I don't know, I think it's a tough argument. It's one that obviously never be won. But if I had to start a franchise in their prime, I would start it with LeBron, just because I know you can build so many pieces around him.
I think it's a great argument, and I'll go one step further for him. Off the floor,
well,
he's a great ambassador for the game. He's never been in trouble. He does things in his community. Like, you think back to a lot of the other people in that conversation, there might be some times or moments when their character or lack of or showed in some ways. He's been pretty stellar in an era where everything is under a microscope for him.
He started a school. Yeah. He's given opportunities to communities that would have had opportunities. He's not afraid to put his opinion out about political, social, whatever it may be, movements. Yeah. And he seems to be a good husband and good dad. And that's pretty cool. And when you consider coming out, the hype he had, he's exceeded the hype he had.
When you're called the king in high school, odds are you're going to fail.
And the play, I mean, think about like guys like Felipe Lopez and guys who were coming out that were just these can't miss guys whenever we were growing up, or I was. And here comes another one that you think is going to be, and then he is that, and he's more. And like you said, there's so much social media. Like, if he is, his ability to cover up if there is something is unbelievable, because you're exposed hourly on that thing. And so,
Coach, 2 more, because we really went deep into some of the speed round questions. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
I'm not a coffee drinker. I haven't. I tried to drink coffee. Tried to get into it maybe 10, 15 years ago, and just couldn't acquire a taste for it. I always say I wasn't tough enough to drink coffee. I didn't throw nothing but sugar and cream in it. So I just drink water.
You're a water guy.
Water and an unsweet tea guy.
All right. Last one. Godfather, Star Wars, or neither?
Star Wars.
Nice.
Yeah. I was my dad was a Godfather. I grew up, that was one of the 5 or 6 VHSs we had in the house, was Godfather, Raging Bull, National Lampoon's Vacation. There was some Caddyshack. There were some that were there that I grew up watching on repeat. But Star Wars, I mean, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a Star Wars. I would like to think I'm more of a Star Wars nerd than I am. My wife reminds me I'm really not, because I don't know all
You know,
the
the whole
stories
canon.
behind. I don't know all of it, but again, I grew up in that era where Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi,
Yeah.
and yeah, if there's a new one that comes out, I'm not lining up to see it, but I'm gonna see
Coach,
it.
you're dressed up, aren't you? When you no, but Tyler Costin is a bigger Star Wars fan than you and I are, because he was telling me, I mean, he's gone through all of even the computer, the animated series, Clone Wars. He's gone through all those, because he actually said that the stories and characters in that like really matter to the entire canon. I haven't gotten that deep, but I do love it.
No,
so yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you. You just gave up a ton of time talking hoops. I'm fascinated with how you play, but then also just the player that you were, the coach that you are, being at your school for so long, man. It was incredible.
Coach, thank you. And I mean, I feel kind of like I need to. Again, you're a guy I need to be in talk. We need to talk, because we have similar mindsets. It sounds like, as far as what we want to do, and I need to. You're one of those guys that has that list of like guys I need to reach out to and talk to and pick your brain and figure out, from you kind of what how you do what you do, because I know we've talked a lot about our style on that, but anything we can add, I'm all, and I mean that. Like, I want, because there aren't a lot of pressing guys in that do it, and so it's almost like kind of your own little different club, or it's like,
sure.
If you find those guys, you want to get on the phone and just, because that idea of, like you said, of playing fast and how fast can I go, and those are conversations I've had ad nauseum with like Coach Evans and with different people. Just like, man, what is the fastest way we can play where it still makes sense and we have a chance to win?
Yeah.
And so I would love. I thanks for having me on, because I feel kind of foolish that I didn't. I remember you as a player, and I do. You were a good player. I mean, I remember out of high school. I remember you at Baylor, and I remember watching you when I was. And I'm not just watching you. When I was doing the radio there, and respecting, because I know how hard it is to make it. And it's one thing to get there, and it's another thing to make it for 4 years.
Yeah.
And when you're going through ups and downs, and getting some minutes, but maybe not, and then sticking with it, and having some challenges that you're every day going against physically, and you're just trying to survive, man. You know what I mean? Like, you're just trying to get to the next day. And so when you know somebody did that for 4 years every day, man, it's not easy. And so I always from a distance have had respect for you. And I mean that. I just never had a chance to know you. I've seen this. I know you've had a lot of guests on this podcast. I follow that. I know you wrote a book. Like, I know I've seen you on screen with documentary, and I've seen different stuff of you. And so I've known of you, just again, never had a chance to actually connect with you. So
yeah.
I do. I genuinely appreciate you having me on, so I could learn more about kind of what you do, and allow me to. And Coach Carson, I got to thank him too. He kind of helped bridge a gap whenever we were down at TABC. And again, he's always, I joke, but he's always been great. I got to know multiple guys off that team that beat us that year, and so getting to know him and some of the doors that's opened. It's crazy how basketball allows. It's one of the things that allows so many doors to be open, and so many relationships. It's really cool, and it's really something that is fun. So this was fun for me. I do appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we can stay in touch, man, and talk more about this, these ideas, and again, maybe
Coach, I'm always down.
I can add some things.
I'm always down to talk fast basketball. It is definitely one of my passions, and getting to listen to you was awesome. If coaches have a question about your system, the pressing, anything else that you do, even your culture, because I thought there was some awesome stuff there, what's a great way for them to get in contact with you?
They can just call me on my cell. It's 512-796-9278, and that's the best way, because I give my email, which is fine, but like if you just text me or call, and like I'm pretty accessible, honestly. So getting in touch with me. I'm not that important. So getting in touch with me is pretty simple.
Well, Coach, you're my first Mr. Texas basketball I've ever spoken to. So you're pretty important. But hey, no, thank you so much, Coach. This was awesome.
Hey, thanks, Coach. Good luck with this. Good luck with your season. Let's stay in touch.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.